There's a prevailing belief in modern culture that attractiveness fades with age, that after 50, a man becomes less visible, less desirable, less relevant in the eyes of women, especially younger women. But that belief is based on a shallow understanding of what attraction actually is. Attraction doesn't disappear with age, it evolves. And for men who understand that evolution, who lean into it rather than fight against it, the result is a kind of appeal that younger men simply cannot replicate. Because while youth offers novelty and physical intensity, maturity offers something far more compelling: presence, steadiness, self-possession. And those qualities, when embodied authentically, create a gravitational pull that has nothing to do with how old you are and everything to do with how grounded you've become. This is not about pretending to be younger. It's not about chasing trends or trying to compete on terms that don't favor you. It's about recognizing that the qualities you've developed over decades, emotional regulation, quiet confidence, the ability to occupy space without apology, are exactly the qualities that mature women find most attractive. And here's what most men don't realize. The signs that you possess those qualities are observable. They show up in how you move, how you speak, how you respond to tension, and how you engage with the world around you. Today, I'm going to walk you through 7 of those signs. Not so you can perform them, but so you can recognize them in yourself. Because if these qualities are already present, if you're already embodying them without realizing it, you're far more attractive than you think. Let's begin. Before we look at the signs themselves, it's important to understand why mature masculine appeal works the way it does. Women's attraction shifts as they mature. What captivated them at 25, intensity, unpredictability, novelty, often loses its appeal by 40 or 50. Not because those things are inherently unattractive, but because they've learned through experience that intensity without stability is exhausting. What becomes attractive instead is depth, emotional regulation, the ability to remain steady when everything around you is chaotic. This is rooted in nervous system psychology. A woman's nervous system is constantly assessing whether the people around her are safe or destabilizing. And as she matures, she becomes far more attuned to that assessment. A younger man might offer excitement, but excitement often comes with volatility. A mature man who has done the work, who has learned to regulate his emotions, who doesn't need external validation to feel secure, who can sit in discomfort without reacting, offers something entirely different: gravity. Gravity is the quality that makes someone feel solid, unmovable. Trustworthy not because they say the right things, but because their presence itself communicates stability. And stability, for a mature woman, is deeply attractive. So the signs we're about to discuss are not about what you do to impress someone. They're about what you've become through years of experience, discipline, and self-awareness. And that's what makes them real. If this resonates, subscribe to Femme Psychology with Emma. We explore the psychology of mature attraction without noise. You remain emotionally steady in tense moments. Most people, when confronted with conflict or emotional intensity, react. They escalate. They defend. They withdraw. Their nervous system goes into fight, flight, or freeze, and their behavior reflects that activation. But a man who has developed emotional maturity does something different. He stays present. He doesn't match the intensity. He doesn't collapse under pressure. He simply holds the space. This is one of the most attractive qualities a man can have because it communicates that he is not controlled by external circumstances. He's not reactive. He's not fragile. And for a woman, especially one who has spent years around men who couldn't regulate themselves, that steadiness is magnetic. It shows up in small ways. A conversation becomes heated. Instead of raising your voice or becoming defensive, you pause. You breathe. You respond calmly, not because you're suppressing emotion, but because you've learned that reacting doesn't solve anything. That pause, that ability to stay grounded when others are not, is what separates mature masculine energy from younger, less regulated energy. Younger men often believe that strength is about dominance or intensity, but mature strength is about containment. It's about being able to hold tension without needing to discharge it immediately. And women notice that difference immediately. You are comfortable with silence. Most people are deeply uncomfortable with conversational pauses. They feel the need to fill every gap with words, jokes, or questions. Silence feels like failure, like something is wrong. But a man who has developed self-possession doesn't experience silence that way. He can sit with another person without speaking and feel completely at ease. This is attractive because it signals internal sufficiency. It shows that you don't need constant external stimulation to feel okay. You're comfortable in your own presence, and that comfort extends to the people around you. When you're with a woman and silence arises, you don't rush to break it. You let it exist. You might hold eye contact. You might simply be present. And that presence, calm, unhurried, unbothered, creates a kind of intimacy that words cannot. Silence also allows space for emotional depth. When you're not constantly performing or filling the air with noise, the other person has room to feel, to think, to connect with what's happening beneath the surface. Younger men often mistake constant conversation for connection, but mature men understand that real connection often happens in the pauses, and women feel that difference. You do not chase validation. This is one of the clearest indicators of mature attractiveness. A man who constantly seeks approval, who adjusts his behavior based on how others respond, who needs reassurance that he's valued, radiates insecurity. And insecurity, no matter how well disguised, is unattractive. But a man who is secure in himself doesn't need external validation to feel whole. He's not performing for approval. He's not monitoring reactions to see if he's being liked or respected. He simply is. This shows up in how you move through social situations. You're not trying to be the most interesting person in the room. You're not competing for attention. You're just present, engaged, and unbothered by whether people are impressed. It shows up in relationships. You don't need constant reassurance that a woman is interested. You don't fish for compliments or seek confirmation that you're attractive. You trust your value because it's rooted in something internal, not external. And that self-assurance, quiet, grounded, unshakable, is one of the most attractive qualities you can embody. Because it tells a woman that you don't need her to complete you, that you're choosing to be with her, not out of desperation, but out of genuine desire. And choice rooted in sufficiency is far more compelling than need. Your movements are unhurried and deliberate. The way you move through the world says everything about your internal state. Rushed, jerky, or scattered movements signal anxiety, urgency, or lack of control. Slow, intentional, grounded movements signal calm, confidence, and presence. And women are extraordinarily attuned to that difference. A man who moves deliberately, who doesn't rush through doorways, who doesn't fidget, who gestures with purpose rather than nervousness, communicates that he is in control of his own tempo. He's not being pushed around by external pressures. He's moving at his own pace. This is deeply attractive because it reflects emotional regulation. It shows that you're not in a constant state of internal urgency. You're grounded, steady, unhurried. It also creates a kind of gravitational presence. People around you unconsciously slow down. The energy in the room adjusts to match yours. And that subtle shift in energy, where you become the center of calm rather than chaos, is what mature masculine appeal looks like in motion. Younger men often move with intensity or speed, believing it communicates energy. But mature men understand that true presence is unhurried, and presence is always more attractive than performance. You maintain strong boundaries, without aggression. Boundaries are one of the clearest indicators of self-respect. A man who has no boundaries, who allows others to dictate his time, his energy, or his values, is not attractive. He's accommodating. And accommodation, while pleasant in the short term, does not generate respect. But aggression doesn't work either. A man who enforces boundaries through anger, dominance, or control comes across as insecure and rigid. What's attractive is the middle ground: calm, clear, unapologetic boundaries. This looks like saying no without explaining yourself. It looks like ending a conversation that has become disrespectful without raising your voice. It looks like walking away from situations that don't serve you without drama or resentment. Strong boundaries communicate that you value yourself. that your time, your energy, and your peace are not negotiable, and that self-valuation is magnetic, because a woman who sees a man who respects himself knows that he will also respect her, and respect in mature relationships is the foundation of everything. Younger men often struggle with boundaries. They either have none or enforce them rigidly, but mature men have learned the art of holding the line calmly, and that calm enforcement is one of the most attractive forms of strength. You listen without trying to impress. Most people don't actually listen. They wait for their turn to speak. They're formulating responses while the other person is still talking. They're performing interest rather than experiencing it. But a man who has developed emotional maturity listens differently. He's not trying to prove anything. He's not looking for an opportunity to insert his own story or demonstrate his knowledge. He's simply present with what's being said. This kind of listening is rare, and it's deeply attractive because when you listen without agenda, the other person feels seen, heard, valued. And that feeling, being genuinely witnessed without judgment or performance, is one of the most intimate experiences a person can have. It also communicates confidence. A man who doesn't need to impress is a man who is secure in his own value. He doesn't need to prove himself through words. His presence is enough. Younger men often try to establish value through what they say, but mature men understand that value is established through how they listen. And listening, real, unhurried, non-performative listening, is one of the most powerful forms of attraction. You carry. Quiet social gravity, most powerful. Now we come to the seventh and most important sign. You carry quiet social gravity. Social gravity is the quality that makes people naturally orient toward you without you doing anything to demand their attention. It's not about being the loudest or the most charismatic. It's about being the most grounded. When you walk into a room, people notice, not because you're performing or trying to be noticed, but because your presence itself creates a shift in energy. You're calm, centered, unhurried, and that calm creates a gravitational pull. This is the culmination of all the other signs: emotional steadiness, comfort with silence, freedom from validation seeking, deliberate movement, strong boundaries, deep listening. All of those qualities combine to create a kind of presence that is undeniable. And women, especially mature women, are drawn to that presence in ways they often can't articulate. Because social gravity is not something you can fake. It's the result of years of self-work, discipline, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are and being unbothered by who you're not. Younger men often try to create presence through volume, intensity, or performance. But mature men understand that real presence is quiet. And quiet presence is the most attractive force there is. These 7 signs are not things you perform. They're things you embody. And embodiment is the key word here, because attractiveness at this stage of life is not about doing the right things. It's about becoming the kind of man who naturally does those things because they reflect who you are. You can't fake emotional steadiness. You can't fake comfort with silence. You can't fake freedom from validation seeking. Those qualities only exist when they're real. And that's the difference between mature masculine appeal and younger masculine performance. Younger men are still figuring out who they are. They're still trying on identities, testing strategies, performing confidence they don't yet fully feel. But mature men, men who have done the work, are no longer performing. They're simply being. And being is always more attractive than trying. So if you recognize these signs in yourself, understand that you're not competing with youth. You're operating in an entirely different category, one that values depth over novelty, presence over performance, gravity over flash. And that category is exactly where mature attraction lives. Attractiveness after 60 is not about competing with youth. It is about becoming unmistakably grounded. It's about recognizing that the qualities you've developed over decades, the emotional regulation, the self-possession, the quiet confidence, are not signs of decline. They're signs of evolution. And evolution, when embraced fully, creates a kind of appeal that younger men simply cannot access yet. So if you embody these 7 signs, if you remain steady in tension, comfortable in silence, free from validation seeking, deliberate in movement, strong in boundaries, deep in listening, and grounded in presence, you are far more attractive than you realize. Not because you're trying to be, but because you are. And that authenticity, that refusal to perform or pretend, is what mature women find irresistible. So stop questioning your value. Stop comparing yourself to men half your age. Stop worrying about whether you're still relevant. Because if you've done the work to become the kind of man who embodies these qualities, you're not just relevant, you're magnetic. If this resonated, comment below which sign you recognize most in yourself. I want to know what landed, and subscribe to Femme Psychology with Emma for more insight into mature attraction, presence, and psychological depth. I'll see you in the next one.